Everyone wants to be number one, but why have we found the worst way to do it? Plus, stepping down, refusing to leave, and the high price of sticking around.
Week in Review is made possible through the generous support of Dave and Jamie Cummings, Smithfield Foods, Haas and Wilkerson Insurance, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
Hello and welcome. I'm Nick Haynes, and thank you for joining us again on the program that connects the dots on the news of the week in this place we call home, rolling up their sleeves to pour through the week's most important local stories. We're thrilled to have Caroline Sweeney from KCTV5 with us. Equally delighted to engage with the Kansas City Star's chief political correspondent, Brian Lowry. On call at the Call newspaper, senior writer Eric Wesson, and columnist and Star editorial writer Dave Helling. Now, one of the biggest national news stories of the week was the guilty verdict against America's dad, Bill Cosby, in what was described as the first celebrity criminal trial of the Me Too era. Here locally, the biggest story remains the future of the Missouri governor, who faces his own trial for allegedly inappropriate conduct involving a woman. But some interesting new twists and turns in that story this week. A new poll finds a majority of Missouri Republicans still support Eric Greitens and think he's doing a good job as governor. Does that chill calls for his impeachment? The St. Louis Post-Dispatch acknowledging this week the uphill struggle to make the case against him, with an editorial pointing to what they claim are concerning weaknesses in the prosecution's handling of the case. And according to some news sources, there are influential officials who say privately they now believe Greitens could still be in the job when his term ends in January of 2021. Is that really plausible, Brian?
Well, I think one thing you need to remember with Greitens is this is not the only criminal charge that he faces. So even if he is acquitted of this invasion of privacy charge, he just got charged this month with a new felony, which is a computer tampering charge. That's based off of an investigation from the Attorney General. It's the same prosecutor in St. Louis is handling that case, but it's based off of a investigation by the Republican Attorney General, who has also turned that material over to the House committee. So he might get by on this felony indictment about the invasion of privacy, which is a case that's complicated. They don't have the photo. You just had one of the investigators in the case take the Fifth Amendment when he's being faced with perjury allegations from Greitens' legal team. The invasion of privacy case is definitely muddled, but there may be a slightly stronger case coming down the way.
Caroline.
But when you're talking about whether or not he's going to have his seat again in coming up, the thing that I keep hearing in Jefferson City is the criminal cases against him in the impeachment process, although they stem from the same things, they run parallel to each other. And there's a lot of work going on with both representatives and senators to let their constituents know that even if the criminal case shakes out one way, the impeachment process can still continue to move forward.
We also saw, as another twist to this case this week, Dave Helling, $100,000 in anonymous checks coming to the man, the bank account of the man who brought these charges or brought these accusations forward in the very first place. Does that add weight to the governor's view that somehow there's another agenda going on here?
Well, let's be clear. The money came to the lawyer who represents the ex-husband of the woman who's at the center of this case for legal expenses. And we should be clear that Eric Greitens is busily raising money for his own defense in addition to using taxpayer money for some of it. So there's a little bit of this going on both sides. But it does suggest that the stakes are higher than just a simple invasion of privacy case or the claims of this woman. Now, I think that if you're a defense lawyer for Eric Greitens on the invasion of privacy charge, you look at the verdict in the Bill Cosby case and understand that juries have a different standard maybe than any of us as reporters or anyone else, and particularly a St. Louis jury. And you may be reminded that Eric Greitens faces prison time for this accusation. It's not a fine and $1,000 and see you next week. It's prison time, serious prison time. So I think that we are headed into the next 2 weeks of a lot of pushing and shoving over this particular case. It goes to trial May 14th, or is scheduled to go to trial May 14th, and the stakes at that time cannot possibly be higher.
Now, while the Missouri governor is refusing to step aside, the director of the Beleaguered American Jazz Museum at 18th and Vine is stepping down. Chepto Kosatani Buckner says she'll leave the cash-strapped attraction next month. The consultant's report, commissioned by the city, recently faulted the museum's leadership as the city injected more than $1 million of taxpayer money in the last 12 months to help keep the doors open. Eric, did she leave of her own accord, or was she pushed?
She was pretty much pushed. With City Councilman Scott Wagner and that committee saying, we're not going to give any money or release any money for you to balance your books out for the rest of the year, with that leadership remaining intact. So at the meeting that they had down at City Hall on Wednesday, she said that she wasn't going to be leading the museum anymore, and that kind of went along with what the city wanted to do, because one of those things, a scaling report, was that the leadership there needed to be removed.
Can anyone, though, come in here, if the help wanted sign is put out for a new CEO, be successful with a museum? It's difficult to run any museum in this community.
That's correct, Nick. Museum operations are always on a very thin thread, and the Jazz Museum is no exception. And additionally, I've heard some calls this week, let's go for a nationwide search and find some nationally known expert in running museums related to music. That's difficult because the Jazz Museum lacks an aggressive endowment, financial backing. I mean, it's hard to imagine recruiting a well-known, expensive director in the current status. So it's going to be very difficult going forward. But I think if we put the cart a little bit before the horse, when we talk about the director or the board even, I mean, it takes some time to do that, but it needs a plan. The museum has to have a plan for financing going forward, and it lacks that now, or at least a broad plan that's executable, and I think they should spend some time on that, frankly.
What I'm hearing when I'm out reporting on these things is that people around Kansas City were excited about what the city council was looking for when they were talking about 18th and Vine and what they were looking for in the success of the Jazz Museum. But now, especially with some of the turmoil on the board of directors and the amount that all this is going to cost, more than $700,000, Kansas Cityans are starting to sour on this project, and they'd like to see it start moving forward with more momentum.
Other than then getting rid of the executive director, changing out the board members, is there any vision for what this could be, Eric?
Well, there's several things. I think they've got the First Friday program down there that they take the head on. There's the youth that come in with the jazz concerts. I think they had one last weekend that was tremendously successful. So there are some vision and there's some direction, but how they implement new exhibits, fixing the exhibits that they have, finding the exhibits that they have, because one of the things was that they didn't know where a lot of their exhibits were, and getting somebody that can change the image of the museum, that is going to be key to whether it's successful or not.
It's always great to be ranked #1, but is there any pride in being named #1 in the nation for black homicides? It's a surprising statistic, but Missouri now leads the country in the murder rate of African Americans. Kansas, by the way, also in the top 10. Meanwhile, just as area students hold events in the last week to call for renewed action against gun violence, there's a spike in gun crime. The slaying of a utility worker downtown brings the total death toll in Kansas City to 40. That's a 12% jump on this time last year, and that was the worst death count in quarter of a century. I want to get into the black homicides in a second, but Caroline Sweeney, a lot of people this week very chilled by the death of a construction worker, and it's claimed in many news reports that he was asked, can I get a cigarette? And because he says no, he is shot. Is there more to the story than that?
We're still working to figure that out, but that's what we're hearing from the family when a colleague of mine went to go talk to them on Tuesday night. And I think just the idea that people out there doing their job, that's what I'm hearing when we were in the 9th and Brooklyn neighborhood, really resonated with a lot of people. After our 6 o'clock live hit, people were already starting to come and lay flowers and candles. People in the neighborhood who didn't know this person, but the word I kept hearing over and over again was senseless. This is a senseless act of violence, and I think that is what's propelling people to continue to have this conversation about ending a lot of this gun violence.
And I was also surprised to learn that there were construction workers who said they were already wearing bulletproof vests, even in advance of this shooting.
I talked to one member of the crew there, and he was just telling me that they're put in such a vulnerable position. There's a lot of loud construction machines going on. They're very focused on their job. And so when they're out there, they really do have to protect themselves. I hadn't heard of any other gun-related issues in the Kansas City area around construction at the time, but they were ready to kind of protect themselves.
But number one for black homicides now in the state of Missouri, Eric Weston. Are we any the wiser as to why that would be the case?
No. And even in the situation where Jonathan had gotten killed, you still have a situation. A young lady was in bed asleep. Stray bullet comes through the window, shoots her and kills her. So I guess it's like, what's the homicide that triggers everybody to want to get involved and say something about the homicides, the gun control? Which one is it going to take to get legislators to come up with something? One of the things that I find interesting in all of this is we still haven't seen the chief of police step forward in front of a camera and let people know that they've got some plan or they got things under control. And it's just alarming to see it go up.
Rex Archer, who is the Kansas City Health Department director, and several associates came to the editorial board a couple of days ago at the Star to talk about violence, gun violence in Kansas City. And it's long been their argument that it's like you can compare it to an epidemic. If you had cholera, sometimes it's, shootings are in the same sort of geographic area and some of the correlations there. And we asked him, is there something about Missouri that is particularly a problem in this regard? Because it's not just Kansas City, but it's also St. Louis. And other cities have been able to at least reduce their homicide rates more than Kansas City and St. Louis have. And their argument was, Missouri doesn't spend enough money on the sort of social things that you need to do, jobs, mentoring, transportation, all the other things that communities in other parts of the country are doing. We don't do because Missouri won't pay for them, because they argue Missouri doesn't care about St. Louis and Kansas City and it's killing each other. So, but the other part of that argument is, we spend an enormous amount of money on the police department in Kansas City because of the murder rate. That money might be spent on other things, like counseling, like job training, like education. And it can't be because we think somehow in Kansas City, and presumably in St. Louis as well, that just hiring more cops are going to solve it for you. I think that's one of the things that's going to be challenged.
We also hear that in Topeka and Jefferson City, they're not doing anything about guns. That is part of the problem. But this week, Brian, the new governor of Kansas, signs a law that makes it harder for those convicted of domestic violence from possessing a firearm. So there is action taking place.
Right, and this was really pushed for by Moms Demand Action. It's, I think, the most significant piece of gun control legislation, maybe rather the only piece of gun control legislation that I can remember passing in Kansas politics as long as I've been covering it. But I will note, even within this new law that includes some meaningful restrictions on guns, there's also some loosening of other restrictions. There's buried in that new law is also a piece that allows people to buy silencers. So it's kind of anything you get in one of these states on guns, even if it's going to place some restrictions or limits, is also going to probably be paired with some amount of compromise that loosens another piece of
Absolutely. But we are told a big deal of the crime that we see locally is a result, and across the country, of course, as a result relating to domestic violence cases. Caroline.
We were looking at this, and KCTV5 sat down with Jean Peters Baker. Right now in the year, it's too early to determine if the violence against women we've seen in the first part of the year is going to continue to rise, but there are alarming rates out there from years past. And so I think this is something that when the year is over and we start looking at year-long crime statistics, that's something we can go back and start to pinpoint.
Eric.
But how many lives are going to have to be lost before we determine, hey, this is a problem? Domestic violence, whether it's one homicide or 50, that's a problem, and that's a problem that needs to be addressed without the statistics. The fact is, in Lee Summit the other day, a woman was at work and her husband came in and killed her. I mean, how many homicides will it take? And with the growing number of women and the growing number of domestic violence situations, how many is it going to take for people to say, that's a problem.
Let's head over to Kansas now, where lawmakers just got back to work this week in Topeka to wrap up the legislative session. What is left for them to decide, Brian?
One of the most interesting battles is going to be about this proposed change to the adoption law. There is a push from the Catholic Church and the Collier administration to pass a bill that would essentially explicitly state that faith-based child placement agencies have a religious right to refuse to pair children with certain couples, same-sex couples, right? It doesn't explicitly say that, but that's what they're talking about. So right now you have LGBT rights groups pushing very hard against this. You have the church and the Collier administration pushing very hard for it. The Collier administration argues this is going to encourage more faith-based groups to come on into Kansas, will strengthen the overall child welfare system. The LGBT community says this would amount to taxpayer-funded and sanctioned discrimination. And so this is going to be a very interesting fight because it failed last month by only 5 votes. So there's 5 votes. There's intense pressure on a small group of lawmakers to decide whether or not this goes to the governor's desk.
In Missouri, we seem to get the impression, Caroline, that the only thing that happens right now is what to do with Eric Greitens as governor. In Kansas, oftentimes, it's like the only thing happening there is the school funding issue. Is that solved? It's
not solved yet. You know, they had to come back and fix a huge multi-million-dollar mistake in the school funding bill. They went on their 2-week recess, though, and now they've come back. Now, the people that I've been talking to that are on the floor in the Topeka State House are telling me there is a little bit of concern that it's going to re-up some of the arguments over amendments that they had to fight very hard to keep off in the first place. We're going to see that play out, and it's going to have to play out quickly because the Kansas Supreme Court is not going to wait much longer to start looking at the finalized numbers.
And anything can happen, of course, in a wrap-up session. Any bill could come forward. Is KU nervous about what lawmakers might do to them during this wrap-up session? Some legislators are expressing anger and irritation at KU this week after it's revealed former KU Chancellor Bernadette Gray Little is still being paid more than $500,000 a year, even though she departed the university last summer. KU says she's a special advisor to the school. Lawmakers say it doesn't look good when the universities say they don't have enough money. Brian, will lawmakers enact revenge?
I think it's probably a little bit late for any kind of new legislation to hit KU, but I will say KU has had a very strange relationship with Topeka for many years. It's constantly KU's financials are raising ire in Topeka. So I don't know that you'll see anything this session with kind of the limited amount of time they have, but I would expect that KU in this situation will get a lot of attention next session.
You know, a lot of people are horrified by the headline, though. Wow, $500,000, but is there a legitimate reason for that, Dave?
Well, one assumes that it was negotiated, but yeah, you're going to be horrified about that when tuition is going up and up and up for students, not just at KU, but all the Regents universities, when the demand on taxpayers to support those colleges and universities continues to grow. We all support higher education in the state of Kansas, but you have to be a good steward of the money, and there needs to be some evidence that the former chancellor is providing a good service for this, and it's not just sort of a nice parting gift, and that is a political problem, and she and the university probably need to realize it.
Well, let's stay in Kansas a little while longer. Another big story this week is that a man from Kansas is confirmed as the nation's new Secretary of State.
The yeas are 57, the nays are 42. The nomination is confirmed.
Former Congressman Mike Pompeo of Wichita is now the country's top diplomat. There were concerns that a woman from Missouri might be responsible for preventing him getting the job. Missouri Democrat Claire McCaskill has been the subject of attack ads this week as she claimed to be still in two minds about the nomination.
She's dragging her feet, refusing to support Mike Pompeo for Secretary of State. Listen to Missouri and not to your left-wing Hollywood donors.
Alrighty, McCaskill did end up supporting Pompeo. Why was the Missouri senator, though, so uncertain up until that very last moment? Did it have anything to do with the fact that she's running for re-election this year, Brian?
You are suggesting that politics will enter into how a senator would vote? Well, no, I mean, for Claire McCaskill, She always plays these things fairly close to the vest. This is actually kind of an opposite of her vote on Gorsuch, where she ended up sticking with the Democrats. In this case, she's voting with the Republicans. But she put out a statement still saying, after she had voted for him, saying she has deep reservations about Mike Pompeo. Now, I happen to know Mike because I used to cover him when I was a reporter in Wichita. He is not necessarily a guy that you associate with diplomacy. He is very much a hawk, and so there were a lot of people on the left who were looking at his worldview, very much a clash of civilizations guy, and they were raising some concerns that this is the man you're choosing to be the top diplomat for the country.
I did notice, though, that some groups this week said, oh, she's abandoned her constituency, Eric Wesson. I mean, does this hurt Claire McCaskill, or was this really a no-win situation and she was going to lose some support either way?
It was a no-win situation. She has to be able to connect to rural Missouri, which is Republican, and by doing this, it puts her on the fence to, like, I'm with you guys sometimes I'm not. Her base will probably still be with her, although she's got to engage her base somewhere in this, but I think it was a no-win situation.
The basic thing is she took that ad off of television. I mean, you won't see a November ad. You know, Claire McCaskill wouldn't even approve Mike Pompeo. One assumes that's the case. But she didn't flip her vote for Pompeo until it was clear he was going to be confirmed. I mean, Claire spent a lot of time with, you know, a wet finger into the wind trying to decide which is the most advantageous thing. Merits of this nomination probably were a secondary concern.
It would have also been problematic because she voted for him as CIA director. So for her in this tight race, she would have faced very tough questions. So why do you trust this man to run the intelligence agency but not serve as Secretary of State? So it was a tough vote for her. It's very interesting that you know, we really have the rise of Kansas within the Trump administration, with Mike Pompeo now being Secretary of State.
And by the way, Sam Brownback's boss, which
yes.
we should make sure and point out.
And I wonder if
Sam Brownback
performance review.
That's right, now works for Mike Pompeo.
All righty. Well, back in Kansas City, a new panel set up by Mayor Sly James to study how to best recognize Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in Kansas City holds its first public hearing this week. Eric, you were one of those handpicked people serving on that panel. Well, what did we learn from that this week?
We learned that out of 19 people that gave testimony this past week, 5 of them went with Paseo. There were 5 of them that went with Prospect or Truce, but there were some other interesting twists about the new airport being named after Dr. King. There was somebody wanted a district downtown named after him. So we got more feedback and input.
Would that really
from the
be
community.
Feasible, though, to rename the airport after Dr. King?
Well, it could be something that could be done, but I think somebody have to research it and see if the community can decide what to name it, or is that something the aviation department has to do.
Caroline, we were using footage there from KCTV5, and it is worth noting, I mean, there was barely anybody in the room. You know, even though all those letters to the editors, and this is one of the few issues I hear from people time and time again on both sides of this issue, but there were very few members of the public there.
Well, this is a young committee, even though Mayor Sly James gave them just 45 days to kind of come up with a path to move forward. And in situations like this, you've got the people on the ground that are ready to talk about this immediately, and they'll be the ones that you'll see at these first meetings. And then as the coverage continues, as the suggestions like the airport become more public, people are going to either say, yes, I agree, or whoa, no, I don't. Let me get my voice out there, and that's why there's still several, I believe 3 public hearings that are still coming up.
So democracy and public engagement is still alive and well then, Caroline, all right?
Yeah, and it is, but one of the things that I hear not only from being on the panel, but at the newspaper is how important is this? We've got homicide rates, we've got infant mortality, we've got housing problems in the community. So how much energy do we want to put into naming a street after Dr. King when we've had all of this other stuff named after
Another way
Dr.
of saying that, Nick, quickly is naming Paseo is one thing. How about fixing Paseo and fixing the problems up and down Paseo? That seems to be a bigger item on the agenda.
Well, that's a lot more complicated there. And finally this week, is term limits the answer to the latest round of horror stories involving public officials officials in Jackson County, a push underway now to place a measure on the August ballot limiting county elected officials to 2 terms in office. The move comes after the abrupt resignation of Sheriff Mike Sharp, the indictment of former Jackson County Executive Mike Sanders in a kickback scheme, and fresh concerns about current leader Frank White's managerial ability. But how would term limits help, Eric?
You wouldn't have people there since the beginning of time. You would give some other people some new ideas, some fresh ideas, maybe a different direction for the legislature to go.
But we have examples of term limits. In fact, the Missouri legislature is term limited. How is that working out? Has it improved the nature?
We never have any problems in Jefferson City whatsoever, right? No, I mean, it's one thing if you talk to people in Jefferson City, one byproduct of term limits that people don't expect is it kind of lowers the, since you lose institutional knowledge, you actually increase the influence of lobbyists. Is one argument that I've heard about the term limits, is because those are the guys who are there for years, and those are the guys who start to steer the ship when you're getting a new crop of people every year who are pretty green. I mean, I would.
But let me just say quickly, Nick, comparing the Jackson County legislature's term limits to the state legislature is probably a bad comparison. The better comparison is the Kansas City Council, which went through this after a petition drive in 1990. I think, on the whole, it's improved government now in Kansas City. Now, have there been problems? Yes. But and by the way, term limits, 2 4-year terms almost guarantees 8 years for everyone you elect. But there has been new blood brought to City Hall. Sly James has to leave after this last year because of term limits. We're going to get a new, fresh shot of energy in Kansas City. I've never been a big fan of term limits, but I think they've worked in Kansas City, and I really think they would work at Jackson County.
It seems to be all happening, though, on the Missouri side. No term limits in the Kansas legislature, for instance, Caroline.
Yeah, and so I think when you're looking at the way Kansans vote, they get very comfortable with who's been leading them in the State House and who is speaking for them as Kansans, and so you'll see them kind of come back time and time again.
And that is our Week in Review. Our thanks to our news reviewers from KCTV5 News, Caroline Sweeney, and from The Call, Eric Wesson. From the pages of your Kansas City Star, Brian Lowry and Dave Helling. I'm Nick Haynes. From all of us here at KCPT, thanks for spending part of your weekend with us.